Thank you, Leo. Thank you, everybody. So, true for confession, I am terrified of speaking. So, he set the bar even higher, so now I'm more terrified, but we'll be okay. So, I'm going to talk today about learning Python. And it's learning Python whether you're a beginner, complete beginner, never coded one line of Python, or somebody that's been working with it for years. This talk applies to everybody. I'm also going to talk about cognitive science, which we'll hear a little bit more about. I'm going to talk about Jupyter because that's what I do on my day-to-day basis with work. And then I'm going to talk about something that is really important to me, which is community. And but first, you can see it. It was a short one. You want the battery? Oh, sure. He's my AV lifesaver. He just fixed it. Okay, I think. All right. Anyway, welcome to PyCaribbean. How many are here for the first time? Wow. Rock on. Good job, conference organizers. I wanted to welcome everybody on behalf of the Python Software Foundation and people that just love Python in general. I also wanted to say some thank yous. Thank you to the sponsors. Without you, we would not be here, or we would be sitting out on the street somewhere, like coding on the beach, which sounds pretty good, actually. But thank you, sponsors. Thank you to all the speakers that are here today. It's a fabulous schedule. Thank you to the other keynotes. All of you have touched my life in some way. Luciano, I took his class, I think before or right as the book was first being published. Jackie has bailed me out of many teachings at Grace Hopper when teaching people how to contribute to open source, and Jessica, I don't know if she's here yet, but she inspired me, other Jessica, to get started in open source. And yeah, all right, so do we click now?
Hopefully.
And then I also wanted to, really? Oh, there we go. Okay, we might be able to do this. Okay. As long as we don't have a wardrobe failure, we're good. And I wanted to thank all of you for being here, because you are really the next generation of Python. And what you bring to this community is really what matters most. So, why learn Python? Well, Python is used in a lot of places. It's used in science, robotics, hardware, web stuff, music, animation, pretty much any subject you can think of. Python has a library for it. And so why learn Python? Well, a lot of different reasons. The big question is, where should I start? Or where should I continue to learn? And with 129,000 plus packages out there, that can be a very confusing and daunting thing to do, is to even figure out where to start. And time consuming. Will I be able to learn whatever? What we're seeing more and more of is people from all walks of life, not necessarily computer scientists trained, but what we would call the conversational user. It's kind of what in cognitive science we call them, but it is actually really anybody from a banker to a data scientist to an artist to a musician. All of these folks are using Python. And will they be able to learn it? Well, they might face some fears of whether or not they could. At times they might feel alone. And who do I turn to learn more? And they might have doubts about their own abilities. And I'm not gonna lie, there's gonna be obstacles. I had many obstacles in my path. When I started and I was 21, I didn't start with Python then. Python predates or postdates me. But people think it's like a linear path to get from, oh, I want to learn Python, to, hey, I'm really cool and I get to be with the Python snake. In reality, I'm gonna just hit the little buttons. Thank you, though. Oh, you mean swap yours?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That might work splendidly. But in reality, it was a very circuitous path to me getting to where I am in Python. Truth be told, I probably started my involvement in Python in 2013, which, that's only 5 years ago. Before that, I had never used Python. Ooh, thank you, sir. If I do what?
Just stop the slideshow.
Yep. Well, it says set a keyboard assistant. I should also tell you I'm AV cursed. Chris, can you get me started? I have done talks without any slides. I'm on crutches, no less. So part of the circuitous route. Okay. So most days I'm peaceful and confident. Today may or may not be one of them. But I want to take you back a little bit to 1998. So we'll take the Wayback Machine, like 20 years. And at the time, I was learning Tagalog. I had just moved to the Philippines. I did not know how to buy anything in the grocery store. I could not for the life of me figure out why the bread you had to pay separately from everything else. My kids were starting school. They were 1 and 3 then. And the reason I show you this is learning a language is much like learning programming. And something to keep in mind if you have some doubts, for those of you that speak multiple languages, putting those same learning concepts behind how you learned a foreign language will actually help you with Python. Do we have any musicians in here? We had some great bands earlier. Cool. Same thing. If you learned a musical instrument, if you learn to write, if you learn to cook, all of those will help you as you go on your learning adventure with Python. And also in 1998, Python 1 came out. And you can actually today run it easily using Conda. You can load up a virtual environment, or you could build it from source using the actual source code. And the interesting thing about it is it's very similar to how the language is today. There are more features now, but the fundamentals that were there in 1998 are still there, and the REPL and things like that. So let's go back to where we are today. And many of you are learning Python 3 or have been learning it. I went back to the Philippines. I can't say that my Tagalog is that much better now than it was then, but I am able to get around, and I still continue to use it and try and get better and better, and hopefully that will continue. So how does learning and cognitive science work together? And you think of things, you get ideas, but how do you put it into practice? How do you actually learn something? And cognitive science is much like a sea star. Do we have those here on the beach? Or is it just a California thing? You have those. Okay, cool. And so it's actually made, cognitive science takes a number of disciplines: neuroscience, AI, psychology, education, linguistics, philosophy, and anthropology, among other disciplines, and kind of has an interplay between them. So you're pulling multiple disciplines together to help people learn and help study how people learn. And so why cognitive science? Why is cognitive science important? because it's based on inclusion. Cognitive science is welcoming to ideas from many different disciplines. Cognitive science cross-pollinates ideas between disciplines. And that's really important for learning. And we'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute. But Herbert Simon was sort of one of the fathers of cognitive science. And one of the things he wrote is what a student does and thinks really matters to what the student is able to achieve. And he also said that a teacher can only influence a student. They can't do it for you. Bad teachers can maybe do some harm, but you can rise above those too. And this is actually Jessica McKellar teaching the Boston Python workshop, so Intro to Python, that we had done many, many times and we do in San Diego. And that is how, step by step, we get people learning Python. Now, as adults, we learn a little differently than when we were children. We have some advantage of having experiences out in the world. We've learned other things. We've learned how to bake. We've learned how to clean our house, hopefully. And those experiences are something adult learners really benefit from. And we would call that sort of top-down learning. By the same token, there's also bottom-up learning, which is more data-driven. This is more how children learn. However, through our five senses, we're still learning that way now. And it's the interplay between the two as adults that we have a real advantage when learning. And I'm 52 years old, I'm proud of it. A good friend of mine did a research project on people over 60 and how well they can learn to program. And in an industry where many times people think they're too old at 30, you should be happy to know that people over 60, there is no statistical proof that they can't learn Python or they can't learn how to program. They just need to do it in a slightly different way and rely more on the top-down knowledge they have than on the bottom-up knowledge. So let's look at learning Python. And so why Python? Well, learning a language is something that's empowering, whether it's a foreign language or a programming language. Python, at its beginning, started with a language, Luciano mentioned it earlier, ABC, which was actually a language that was developed to help people learn, to help reduce the complexity around learning. And Guido van Rossum said in a written speech that he gave as well, the most important lesson he learned as a child was about sharing. He was, maybe not surprising, a computer geek and liked building electronics. And what he realized was those were his folks. It wasn't until high school that he met other people with similar interests and that ability to share with other people the things you love. I happen to be a math geek and a computer geek as well, so I kind of understood that. But one of the things he also said is programming languages are how we communicate and express ideas, and those ideas aren't for computers. They're for other people, and the other people that are actually trying to solve problems with you. And that sometimes gets lost in our industry a bit, and I think it's good to remember that programming is a way to communicate. Yes, communicating with the computer, but also communicating on how do I make a website? How do I solve this science problem? How do I make these blinky lights light up on my Raspberry Pi or my microbit. And so why Python 3? I felt like I had to put in a slide on Python 3. If you are first starting out, Python 3 is the version you wish to start with. Even if you are using Django or other web stuff, start with Python 3. If you have like an embedded code base of Python 2, don't despair. They're not that different. So start with 3, and if you need to, supplement with 2. One of the really cool things about Python 3 is f-strings, and f-strings started in Python 3.6. f-strings makes outputting strings so much simpler than the other methods that came before it. And some other things to learn Python 3. There is a young man, 13 years old, in England, who developed a computer editor called EduBlocks. And EduBlocks lets you take that Scratch block-like programming and then translate it into Python. And it is a great way, even as an adult, if you're a visual learner, to learn Python. One of the other things that I learned about in England was there is a library called Mu. And Mu is actually a very user-friendly, learning-friendly code editor. You can see from the top, it is very clean in terms of, it's pretty intuitive, like load is one button, save is another button. It has syntax highlighting, a few different themes, and it has a REPL. It also has IPython built into it as well. And it will, if you click the little thumbs up check button, it'll check your syntax and code in a much nicer way than a traceback, which shows you errors from other things. And you can run Turtle, and we all like Turtle as beginning or new programmers or people just trying to make the time. So definitely check out New. It is just about ready. Another great resource, whether you are a new programmer or somebody looking to level up your skills, is pythontutor.com. And Philip Gao, who was the researcher that did research on people 60 and over, has actually done a lot of research on how people learn and how we learn in a more digital age now where we don't always have face-to-face contact with people. So Python Tutor will actually run through examples, and then it will step you through what's happening behind the scenes, which is really helpful. Like, how do I know how an array works, or a list comprehension? You can try it. And then better still, if you need it explained, there's a button to get live help, where you can actually chat with real people on the other side. And it's all free. So, pretty cool stuff, actually. And all of the slide deck is on Speaker Deck and SlideShare, and you'll have all the links to this. So, as you're learning, Python has been designed for your success. Now, beyond just the language itself, there's a number of tools and libraries in Python that help you learn and help you be productive. One of which is the Jupyter Notebooks. And it's actually how I really got excited about Python. And it was through a music theory library and doing some work at electronics at the Fab Lab in San Diego, which is a community makerspace. And what I saw were people who told me, oh, I never could program. It didn't work, I didn't understand it. All of a sudden understood music. From an appreciation standpoint, what the notebook could do is you could pull up sheet music You could play it. You could write your own music. You could display it in different formats, like those of you that play guitar, like tab format, and you can also convert it to Braille. And so, along with being able to annotate it with words and thoughts behind it. And one of the interesting things is, when Mike Cuthbert presented this music theory library, he presented it from the standpoint of, you can do many things with 5 lines of code or less. And I think in Python, that's pretty true in almost everything you do. And you know, as you get more complicated, it's going to be more lines, but you can do meaningful work in 5 lines of code or less. One of the things that Jessica Ford, who works on my team, say hi, Jessica. She taught a workshop earlier today, a bilingual workshop on Jupyter Lab. She's also going to be doing a little tutorial sprint tomorrow about Jupyter Lab. So if you want to make your first contribution to open source, find her in the open space tomorrow afternoon. And you can actually try Jupyter Lab, along with many other things, on Binder, which we'll get to in a second. I work primarily on Jupyter Hub, and Jupyter Hub is a way to provide notebooks to groups of people, students, research groups. And one of the things that's very powerful about it is you don't have to install anything locally. You can just, I shouldn't say just, you can use a web browser, go to the Jupyter notebooks, and actually be productive. And for all the people that have installed software, has anybody ever had difficulties installing their software? Okay. A lot of us have. And this gets you using things before having to install stuff. And what we've done is we've really made a conscious effort to write documentation that enables everyone to create their own Jupyter Hub instance. And one of the people that I really admire, Demba, who's a professor of electrical engineering at Harvard, actually uses the Jupyter notebooks in his class to teach electrical engineers that don't have a programming background how to build things from wearable electronics that will help people in their lives. And he's used the Jupyter notebooks quite a bit, and if you get a chance at some point, you might want to check out some of his videos, because he's a really inspirational guy too. And then Binder lets you put a GitHub repo URL in, press a button that says launch, and it will launch a notebook in the cloud for you with your GitHub content right there. And one of the nice things that lets you do is share your research with other people. It lets you share your notebooks with friends and family. And it's a way to communicate with other people what you're doing through code and visualizations. And as well, we've made it so that you can go to mybinder.org to run Binder on your own without installing anything. But say you're an instructor that teaches a bunch of classes, maybe you want to make your own Binder. There is extensive documentation on how to do that as well. So we've talked about language and how we learn. We've talked about how some of the tools that we use help you build things. And building things is really important when learning, because one of the ways you learn best is by having lots of little accomplishments. And the way you do that is by actually writing code and solving problems. So I encourage you, if you're learning to program and your hands are not writing code, then you won't get that muscle memory. sort of very similar to learning a musical instrument. You have lots of practice, lots of short snippets that you do as you learn the instrument. And programming is the same way. So write those small programs. And now, my favorite part of Python is actually the community. I've been in other tech communities, and I may be biased, I probably am, but Python has one of the healthiest, most inclusive communities, and it really helps. Remember when I said one of the challenges when you're learning something new is sometimes you feel alone? Well, meetups, workshops, this is San Diego, it was probably 90-degree weather, and we had lots of people learning intro to Python. And as well, Django girls and PyLadies, I see some thumbs up back up there, that's cool. Django girls, even if you don't attend their workshop and you're interested in learning Django, go to the tutorial. The tutorial is fantastic. And do it once, twice, 30 times. I learn something every time I do it again. PyCaribbean, Python actually spends a lot of time teaching teachers how to teach Python. And this was in England. These were teachers that had never coded before. They spent 2 days in a little workshop. They built a football game where you would kick this poor little teddy bears, 3 teddy bears duct taped together, into their goal. It would hit a paper plate, and when it hit the paper plate, it would say, goal, and have some animation. And the thing about it was they were laughing and having a blast while they were learning. And they will remember that, and that will get translated to the children that they teach. Another way that Python is kind of cool, I'm an open hardware geek, and lighting up blinky lights a lot of people like. And there's MicroPython. CircuitPython is a fork of MicroPython that kind of tracks it, and they contribute back to MicroPython as well. They have done a lot of work building a community around CircuitPython to teach code. And at PyCascades, one of their engineers was there explaining to people in the audience what that circuit playground will do, how it runs the Python 3 REPL, and it's actually pretty cool stuff. Another way is the Python Software Foundation. Due to their grant, we are here today. And Leonardo did a great job at the beginning of the day explaining that. And the grants that they give are just key, especially for new conferences. It really is hard to be a first-time conference organizer and take the burden on making an event as well, and the Python Software Foundation tries to make it easier to do that. So one of my favorite quotes from Guido is, "A programming language created by a community fosters happiness in its users around the world." And it's a great message. It's not, oh, if you have XYZ feature in the language, that's what makes your language great. He recognizes, and did a long time ago, that the community was key to making the language successful. So learning, building, sharing, those all interplay together to really drive the most important thing of learning, and that's you. What you put into this community and the language will be what you get out. So I encourage you to immerse yourself. Start doing things, whatever your interest is. If you don't know where to start, there are a lot of people in this room that would love to help. If you're trying to build more skills, like you haven't used PyTest and want to learn how, ask for help. Ask, hey, does anybody in here know PyTest? Somebody probably does. So the messages I want to leave you are: choose a language designed for learning. Use learner-friendly tools and libraries. Encourage others and share your knowledge. Complete, once you've worked in Python for a month, you are qualified and capable of giving a lightning talk or a talk. We had some in our user group that did talks on Turtle and PEP8, and I learned stuff about PEP8 that I had no idea was in there before. So there's always, along the way, enjoy the journey. And remember, you in Python leads to success. So my call to action to you is, what will you do in the next 2 years with Python? And how will you succeed in getting there? Setting small, measurable goals is a good first step. Believing that it's possible to get there is also a really important step. And working together with others. It wasn't that long ago, there was only 1% of the talks at PyCon US were women. And Jessica McKellar felt really strongly, along with some other folks in the community, that the number of women speaking should be higher. And I'm happy to say that, I don't know what the number was 2017, but I'm pretty sure it was about 40%. That's a huge change in 5-6 years. And it was done little by little. It was done by somebody putting in, or a group of people putting in hard work, emailing and encouraging people to speak. I would not be standing here today if Jessica hadn't reached out 5 years ago and said, hey Carol, I like the work that you're doing with music. Have you ever considered giving a talk? And I was like, no way, I don't know any Python. And she's like, no, the stuff you're doing is really cool. So I had submitted a talk and a poster. The talk got rejected. No surprise. And rightfully so, it should have been rejected, because looking at all the proposals that year, it was not as good as many other proposals. But what it did is it opened the door for me to actually be on the program committee, to read talks. And now I can actually encourage people to speak. I can help coach them through the process of writing a talk proposal, which for the first time you're doing it can be a little intimidating. And truth be told, I don't particularly like speaking. I'm less terrified than when I started, so I guess that's a good thing. But I think it's really important to share your knowledge, what you know, with other people. And I think that's what really makes the community strong. So we may say we came for the language, but we stayed for the community. And I hope in the years to come, that will continue to be the Python language and community that I know and love. So for all of you, thank you. This was my first night here in the DR, and talk about a beautiful, spectacular sunset. It was just amazing. So keep doing the awesome stuff that you do. And I'm not sure where we are on time, but if there are questions, I'm happy to answer them now.
Yep, you have time.
I have time?
Yes.
Cool. So any questions about Python, learning, Jupyter, comments, criticisms? Yeah.
What if someone wanted to start a group in the DR or a pilot group? Like, what are the steps they can take?
So the question was, what are the steps that somebody can take if they want to start a PyLadies group in the DR? And I'm going to pass this over to one of my esteemed fellow keynote speakers, Jackie, who's also very involved in PyLadies, and I'm going to let her answer that while I get a drink of water.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, it's okay. What you do
start your group, use Meetup, and get money back.
There's also, PyLady's website has like a whole toolkit on how to do all the other stuff and logistics and that kind of stuff. So yeah, but Jackie's right. Get your friends together and just start.
Yeah, Carol had a nice point there. There's a whole toolkit. It's called, it's on the website, you can install PyLadies. Shout out to Lynn Root, who is the monster in a good way. Maybe that's not the right word. Who just like pulled that all together. She's amazing. Yeah, so just get started and go from there. There's also a Slack channel and email group and other organizers to support everyone who wants to do that.
Or you could email us personally and we'll help you more. More questions, comments, criticisms, things that you would like to tell other people that you're going to learn in the next year. I'm going to try and learn more about async I/O because I do a lot of work with distributed systems and concurrency, and it's a little confusing, but there are some really good tutorials and resources out there for it. So, all right, question up in the back, or comments? Question.
And it's just a real question.
It's a real question.
If you wanna ask questions, you can talk to the box.
Talk to the box. That is cool. All right, Box is my new friend.
Alright, so this is like this. So I am a web developer and I work a lot in Django, and so there's lots of cool things that Python can do, but in my work I don't necessarily have to touch on all those things. So do you have any suggestions for somebody like me who wants to like learn how to do cool things in Python, but you know, my day-to-day Python's a little mundane?
Great question. So, how do you use Python when your day-to-day job either doesn't include Python or doesn't include the things in Python that you wish to learn? There's a few things. If you are able to have the time to watch videos, going to pyvideo.org and pulling up conference videos or tutorials are one way. Getting on a Slack channel or a mailing list and seeing what other folks are up to. Chris and Josh, you know, going to a conference or making your first contribution to open source is a good way. And another great way is to get involved with your meetup group if you can and help teach other people. In San Diego, we've now had a Saturday study group for, I think, 4 years now. And it started because 3 people were out of work. I said I would go to the coffee shop and help them install Python because back then it was a little bit challenging, particularly on Windows. It is much better now, thankfully. And then the next week, I said, oh yeah, I'll meet you again, thinking nobody would show up. We had 20 people, and then more. And what's really cool is we found a venue. We consistently did it every Saturday, and this was just not me, this was a group of people. We learned machine learning. People learned what they wanted to learn. There was no set curriculum, it was fun. We encouraged people to do lightning talks if that was something they wanted to try before our monthly meeting. And what's really, really cool is some of the people that were the original intro to Python, new Python developers who had never coded in Python are now really good developers, are instructors, speakers at conferences, organizers of Django Girl events. And there's something really rewarding about seeing the multiplier effect of teaching other people. So, great question. Question. Where's the box? I just think it's fun to throw the box around.
Let me think. I think that one of the big problems in the parent community, the open source community, is the support. So if I work for a company and I have to do something, I prefer to pay for a library that is filled with support. Because like if you are using .NET, I don't know, but if you're using .NET, you pay like for a library, but you can be sure that you're going to have support. I don't know if this is happening because this Python came from the community, or I don't know why, but that's what I think.
You know, it's an interesting point. Support, if you've got something deployed, is really important. And support as you're learning is also really important. Some of it should be volunteer, community oriented. Some of it can be paid. And one of the things I think with those for-profit companies that are offering open source tools and support, as long as they're giving back to the original project, that's a good thing, because you're meeting the business's needs as well as growing the community as a whole. I know on Jupyter, we're a small team. We're a nonprofit, we're an academic research grant. We can't support the whole world. But there are other companies that are using the Jupyter tools and offering their consulting services. You know, Microsoft is a great example. They use Jupyter notebooks to run Azure notebooks. So if you don't want to deploy something on your own, and you want it to be absolutely certain it's going to, or relatively certain that it's going to be there, you know, that's a great option. So I think it's sort of a give and take. And I think one of the things with open source is you tend to see innovation happening earlier in open source than some of the larger for-profit companies. So innovation, not that there isn't innovation in a for-profit environment, but open source lets, you know, people that are very passionate about a particular project or a particular task work together to further that. So much like the internet, cloud services now, that all came out of open source. And then the businesses came in and helped, you know, really support it and grow it. So I think that's a great question, and I think there's room and space for both. Great. And write good software to start with, then you don't need as much support. Any more questions, or are we ready for dinner?
Yay!
Who had a great time today?
Yay!